Thanks very much. Senator Hertzberg has a question. All right. And we'll open it up for questions.
What's the purpose of a label? What's the purpose? There's a brand. There's some consumer assumption about what that brand means. A Swiss watch versus a watch someplace else. We generally look and say, okay, the Swiss, we believe they're better watchmakers, it's a better quality watch, Swiss made, right? The value of the brand. Second reason why you do it is to support somebody. Union label. I'm only going to wear union suits that were made by, you know, the garment workers, right? Because I don't believe that I want to support that kind of activity. But what you got here, and that worries me, because I've lived this in the last dozen years as I've traveled the world, is I have seen in so many instances where people with the greatest intentions, they just don't make a product. So the question is, if there's a diode in something, I know we talked about the 5%, which I want to get to, or some other part of a product, or there's certain kind of banning of a paint that you can't use for a finish or something else that it might be, what do? You lose the benefit of that. And if in fact 64% of the people buy a product because they want to support it, I mean, this is your number on 64%, what are you really getting to? The reality is you go buy, and I mentioned this to the chair, a General Motors vehicle. Well, it's made from like 40 countries. You know, it's incredible. The zipper on a union-made suit is not made in America or not made by union members, right? So the bottom line is, and when you look at the federal standard, this Nike point you make, you know, we were talking about this and I was getting the briefing from staff on this, was that these guys are down as much as 30%. We've got this California law that I looked up that was done a long time ago before we had globalization. You've got a complete contradiction. Somebody was playing games. One sentence says 51%, the next sentence says 100%. And so it's not really law, it's just a gamesmanship that somebody played when they were writing this stuff. I just think that this thing is, you know, when somebody is going into a marketplace and they're spending as a business person more money than the cheapest dollar that they can. When I was in China, they said, you go to Vietnam, you get workers cheaper, right? I didn't do stuff there. I didn't do that stuff. But when you make those decisions as a businessman, your job's to make money. When you make a decision as a business person to support a cause, union or region, California or USA, you often are making a decision to pay a higher price. That is a laudable goal. That is a laudable goal. The challenge here is that not because someone's trying to be cheap, because when somebody's out there buying in the beer market, they're not being cheap. The laudable goal is that I can't get that part. I was in the UK, it was driving me crazy. I couldn't get a couple of parts for my product that I was trying to make in the UK, and I was running up against the exact same problem. So to me, maybe what the percentage is, I can't tell you, because I don't know. But what the message is that you have the honor and integrity of the manufacturer trying to solve a problem and doing everything they possibly can in their power to market to that cause or to market to that community, and it's as far as they can go. That, to me, is the probative question when you're trying to get to the brand. And we're sitting there and we're competing with these other guys. I don't think that we should go to the lowest bar. We shouldn't go to the 30% number. I think there's a problem with that. But we certainly should have a standard that gives some recognition to the commercial realities of what it's like to deal in a global economy where we have specialization on a global basis. And when you're trying to do something, it becomes near impossible to do it because you're not going to start a factory to make a little piece here or make a little piece there. You're already paying double retail. So, you know, I mean, I don't know what the number is. I'd like to hear some analysis on the 5% that the chair was talking about on the committee versus a 10% and what that really means in real order magnitude. And maybe as we were joking around, you could set a standard that says, just like we have when lawyers go after you, a standard that says, okay, here's the percentage, but then say you got to make a showing that you couldn't get this anyplace else, because that's really what's going on. Any manufacturer's doing this is an honorable cause. So maybe you say, okay, the number's 10%, but in order to be that low, you've got to make a showing that if someone comes after you, that you did, here's my paperwork, why I couldn't get anyplace else, period. And then you have a much higher standard than the feds, but you have a standard for somebody like the flashlight company, which is a great product. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it recognizes the circumstances of the global economy, and maybe that meets the balance.
So is that a question, or would you like Mr. Oliver to respond, or?
It's proselytizing.
I'd be happy
I don't know what the hell it is.
All right, why don't-
It's
I
thinking
tell you
out
what,
loud.
I tell you
I'd
what-
love to know the 10% answer,
could I-
and I'd love to know if that is something that
So,
would work for you
Mr.
guys.
Oliver, why don't you respond? He was looking at you most of the time, and then we'll let Senator Hill respond as well.
Well, Senator Hertzberg used the example of cars that are sourced from various countries. It's actually a really good example because there's a federal law, domestic content law for vehicles, which will tell you how much of that car is U.S., how much of that car is from other countries. And I think that is a truthful standard where you can then make a decision. And I think a similar truthful standard currently exists under California law, where if it's in fact 95% and that's truthful, that's what the label would say. And you wouldn't be afoul of that law. I think most consumers would say, if I can find something labeled 95% versus something that is not U.S. made, I'll favor the U.S. company because they're trying really hard. But that would be a truthful, informed decision. And I think that can be done under current law.
Well, do you think, just real quickly, do you think, if I could ask this question, Madam Chair?
Certainly, through the
we
chair.
should change the same law with respect to all these other examples that we have, with respect to cosmetics, with respect to organic food, with respect to everything? We just had a situation here with Senator Roth where we said we're not going to require everybody to a certain standard. I mean, do we have that? Certainly, truth is ultimately truth. It's important.
So if I may respond,
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
I could certainly list a number of standards that I think you would agree are more precise. For example, a food cannot be labeled as kosher or halal if it contains pork. A food cannot be labeled as meat, as vegetarian, if it contains meat. There are other examples like those that would allow someone to make that informed decision. So I do think that would be a better analogy for the basis for this.
Senator Hill, would you like to
Thank
respond?
you, Madam Chair, but by the same token, you can label an item organic if it has 5% non-organic material in it. You can name it as trans fat free if it has, I believe it's 0.5% trans fat. You can label something as, if I remember correctly, sugar, I think it was sugar-free if it has a small amount of sugar in it. So, I mean, the standard is not precise. I mean, there is allowance for some flexibility, and that's what we're looking for today. And I think, and there's no magic number in the 10%, frankly. I mean, the 5%, I just look at a company that, in my district, the small company, and the challenges that he faced, wanting to do the right thing to sell his product. And if you take his product, you go into a Target store and there's a lamp, and the lamp is made in China or foreign made, and it's $30. And then that lamp is sitting there, and right next to it is another lamp that's made 90% in the U.S., and it's $40. But you don't know it's made in the USA because it's being sold in California, so you're going to buy the $30 lamp because it's cheaper, looks the same, and everything else. But if it had that made in USA label, it was made in California, you're going to probably spend that extra few dollars to buy that because it's made in the USA, because that's what statistics show and surveys show, that you will pay that little extra amount for it, and you're going to be providing the jobs for California residents, whereas otherwise you
I
wouldn't.
think the debate here is boiled down to the fact that, we understand there are sometimes you can't find the product here. The debate is whether or not, when it says made in the USA, how much of that is really made in the USA? Because that is a driver for consumers to buy. We buy more. I buy organic. I was shocked to learn that organic is only 95% organic. I wonder what's that other 5% in that organic fruit that I'm paying a lot more for. But I'm doing that by choice. If I knew that it was that it was being called organic, but it was only 51% organic, I may not buy it. So part of the problem is, what is the percentage? When are you then misleading people? And we understand, we want your business here, but it's the consumer now that we're talking about. To what extent do we say that something is made in the United States when only part of it is?
And I think, and to go to that point, Madam Chair, the issue is trying to find that balance, trying to find that number that works. And when you look at the comparisons around the country, as the opposition raised with New Balance shoes, if it's 70%, I mean, that's
See,
certainly.
they're saying they're American-made. They're
Yes, exactly.
boasting
So
they're
that's going-
American-made.
That's a very far extreme. And that's why, frankly, the original bill, which talked about the Federal Trade Commission standards, you know, they are vague. And it is, I don't think that gives anyone a comfort level of some factual basis to move forward with. And 5% just looked at some of those companies that were, so that's where 10% to me looks like that happy medium, because it's not nearly as close as it could be as some of the foreign countries, some of the other states that have done it, and some of the other products. So it seems to be that number that will work for some companies, but it gives them allowance depending on the size of the product, certainly, and the amount of difficulty they have in finding that.
Well, let me share with you why I thought the 5%, I know Mr. Holliber wants 100%. I thought the 5% was for those incidental things where you just cannot find a place here that makes them. But you're still 95% made in the USA. That's the kind of, then you should be able to advertise it. Then you should be able to boast about it. When we start going down, suddenly, then I sort of think to myself, well, maybe to say 90% made in the USA. But when something is made in the USA, we kind of assume like it's organic. But if it's only 90% or 80%, somehow you feel like you're not really being told the whole story.
And Madam Chair, and you're right. I guess I look at the Made in California standard, the 51%, because all that requires then, in talking about truth in advertising, if you meet the USA standard, which means that if you're 100% made in the USA, but then only 51% made in California, you can market that to everyone in California and everywhere in the world.
But it also says 100%, so we've got to fit
100% USA. There's the difference. 100% USA, but I'm going to be putting a made in California. So if I'm a California resident and I'm going to purchase and have an alternative product, and I see made in California, my assumption is that is made in California.
Yes.
And it's only 51% made in California. So that's where another reason why I think the 90 is a more appropriate number to balance off of.
All right, Senator Martin,
I know.
but I appreciate, I think we're getting somewhere. Senator Martin.
Thank you.
Let Senator Martin ask his question, if you would.
So a comment and a question. The value of the Made in USA label, people have articulated that. It suggests not only that U.S. workers have been employed, it suggests that certain safety standards have been employed that potentially don't exist in a foreign imported product. So that seal, it connotes a lot of things. And in a world of decades ago, 100% or that label meant 100%. But I look at this through the lens of two factors. One's been mentioned by Senator Hertzberg and others. We live in a globalized economy, and we want to create jobs and keep jobs in California. And if we make it so tough to boast that over 90% of the content of this product is U.S., because we hold it to a higher standard, we're putting ourselves at a competitive disadvantage, not just with other countries, but with other states. So we have 49 other states that allow their manufacturers to say made in the USA with less than 100% content. And so we've put ourselves, we're the outlier. And what is the impact of being the outlier? The impact of being the outlier is that we maintain the purest standard in the world, but we're going to have companies leaving California. We're going to have jobs that would go to Californians going somewhere else because the premium that would allow that label with some integrity, I think over 90% is a lot of integrity, we're going to lose jobs, we're going to lose inputs to our economy, and it doesn't mean those products won't be sold. The products, the flashlight will come, I won't name a country, it'll come from a non-US state, a non-US country, and it may have defects or hazards that have somehow cleared through our customs and put our consumers at risk. So I think we should endeavor to find a threshold, and maybe, as Senator Hertzberg suggested, that's linked to the manufacturer's ability to prove that they could not find that product domestically. You combine that certification with a 90% threshold, and then it becomes known that the integrity of this made in the USA, it's 90%. Now, let me just close with a question. And that question is the concern of consumer confidence when they see that label. And this is a question to the author. How do you respond to that, that it's deceiving the consumer that they're getting something that they're not?
Well, I think the deception issue is one that doesn't deceive a customer or consumer. It simply makes the labeling standard really consistent with the rest of the country and what other people are doing when they buy a made in USA product. When they go across the border into another state, they don't know the difference. They say, well, I'm going to purchase that because it's made in the USA, when that same product won't have the USA standard on it. And so and with competing with foreign businesses, it actually helps consumers by providing them with kind of a higher quality than they have in made in USA today. So in made in USA goods. So I think it really provides an opportunity for the consumer to make a better choice. Just as I made the example with the lamps. They will now know that this is foreign made, or at least this is not made in USA made, and this one is actually made in the USA, and they will have a better opportunity to provide that choice.
So I have a suggestion, thanks to Senator Hertzberg. We've been sitting here kind of scratching our heads. We had submitted, and I think everybody here got a proposed set of amendments. What we've been talking about, testing to make sure, having a certain level, requiring that if there's a challenge that you end up showing that it couldn't be made elsewhere. We're arguing over the 5% and the 10%. I'd like to propose a compromise and ask you, my understanding is that you were willing to accept these amendments, but we're arguing over the 5% or the 10%. How about if we do this, that you agree to these amendments, they're in print, and what we will do is under subsection C, it says, for the purposes of subdivision B, negligible shall mean not more than 5%, but not greater than 10% if you can show that you cannot get that material or that parts of that product in the United States. Can we agree on that?
We can agree on that.
And so we've got this would be accepted as author's amendments with that adjustment.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
It's not perfect. I think it's a compromise, and I think it makes sense. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
After the 5%,
and no more than 10% if it can be shown that there is no opportunity to purchase that aspect of the product, those components in the United States.
Accept those amendments, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. With that,
Chair, just to clarify, so then
yes,
up to 5%, there'd be no need
correct.
to document. Okay.
Over 5, between 5.
Wait, hold on one second. Hold on one second. What? Oh, okay. So I think I misspoke. The subdivision B2 says the determination that an article, unit, or part of the merchandise cannot be made, manufactured, produced, or obtained within the United States from a domestic source shall not be based on the cost of the article, unit, or part. That would be, if challenged, from the 100% level. So I think what we're talking about is probably what we should do is the 5%. That gives you a sort of a vig, if you will, that gives you a little room to move from the outset. But if you go as low as 10%, you got to show that that's because there was no other aspect or way to get a hold of that particular component.
Acceptable. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I apologize, but we've got too many other matters going, and we've got others who would like to speak. My apologies, but did you want to move the bill?
Yes.
Senator
I will
Wachowski.
move the bill as so amended.
Excellent, excellent. All righty, Senator Hill. I
Respectfully
think
ask for an aye vote, members, and thank you for the
excellent,
conversation and
excellent
discussion.
conversation. Thank you all. Please call the roll. This is due pass as amended to the Senate floor.
Jackson.
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Morlock. Morlock, aye. Anderson.
Aye.
Anderson, aye. Hertzberg. Hertzberg, aye. Leno. Leno, aye. Monning. Monning, aye. Wachowski.
Aye.
Wachowski, aye.
That bill has 7 votes and it is out. Thank you, Senator
Thank you, Madam
Hill.
Chair, very
All right.
much,
Hallelujah.
and members.
Okay,
Much
we are on
appreciated.
item 19, automated external defibrillators.
Yes, you've had a conversation about that today.
This is the second of these today, and let's
Yes, and
hope we
hopefully
can.
none of you will, or us will need one before this evening's
Yes,
over.
that's an option too.
Let me
All right.
start by thanking the chair and the committee staff for working with me on this important legislation. It's been really wonderful to work with the staff and you on this issue. I'm willing to take the following authors' amendments to address concerns raised by the committee and by the opposition, I feel. One is putting liability language back in the bill, consistent with existing law, increasing the frequency of battery checks from once a year to twice a year, requiring quarterly visual inspections to make sure the device is working properly, keeping records of the battery checks and visual inspections, and a requirement that on an annual basis, an AED demonstration would be offered to at least one person who is associated with the building. We all share the goal of wanting to save more lives with the increased use of AEDs. There are different ways to get more AEDs placed in buildings. Earlier today, you approved legislation mandating AEDs in certain types of buildings. This legislation is complementary to that effort since it will incentivize all businesses and building owners to install AEDs and reduce costs for those who install them in the future. Current laws, immunity requirements for physician oversight, and employee training are 2 of the big cost drivers that discourage installations. SB 658 passed out of the Senate Health Committee last month with unanimous bipartisan support, and it updates the immunity requirements that were established by the legislature in 1999. The requirements for the 1999s were based on older AED technologies that didn't have voice commands, didn't have pre-connected shock pads, didn't have long-lasting batteries, and didn't have voice command CPR coaching. The new generation of AEDs are so simple, as you saw earlier today, and user-friendly that nearly anyone can successfully administer them without training or practice. They even have built-in computers that monitor the heart rhythm of the cardiac arrest victim to determine if shock should be administered. The facts are clear. When more AEDs are available, more lives are saved. Sudden cardiac arrest kills nearly 1,000 people every day in the U.S. AEDs are the most effective way to save these lives. A study by Johns Hopkins University found that Good Samaritan access to AEDs doubles survival from sudden heart attack. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, there have been no reports of AEDs harming users or bystanders. I believe this bill strikes the right balance. It's based on recommendations I've received from healthcare professionals in the field who work with AEDs and try to get them placed in buildings throughout the state. We've got nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Only 10% of victims who suffer a cardiac arrest outside of a hospital setting survive. 10%. This bill is supported by so many organizations you can see in the analysis: Heart Association, Red Cross, healthcare districts, Ambulance Association, Sheriff's Association, El Camino Hospital, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital, Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors, Fire Chiefs Association, Santa Clara County, and the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, and Stanford Healthcare. I have witnesses in support of the item, Madam Chair, and thank you for indulgence.
Thank you very much. Briefly, if you could.
I'm Brenda Tausig. I work for El Camino Hospital, a nonprofit community hospital. I'm also the co-chair of the Health Committee of the Silicon Valley Leadership Group. I'm speaking not only on behalf of my hospital, but also on behalf of SVLG, a coalition of 400 member companies, including small and medium-sized businesses, other hospitals, and primary care providers. As Senator Hill said, 1,000 times a day an American dies from a sudden cardiac arrest. It has a 90% death rate, but it does not have to be that way. The most effective treatment for a sudden cardiac arrest is use of an AED. Those little red boxes that you've seen are simple to use, often very effective in restarting the heart rhythm, and have a truly remarkable track record of safety. And anyone can buy an AED at Costco today without a prescription. Over the past 4 years, our hospital has been involved in several community projects to reduce deaths from sudden cardiac arrest. We've worked closely with many fire departments, our county EMS service, local governments, school districts, nonprofits, and businesses. In the course of this work, we've learned a few things. First, there are not nearly enough AEDs in our communities. And second, virtually everyone we worked with complained that current California AED law discourages installing AEDs. The law is confusing, even for EMS and health professionals, and contains an intimidating list of outdated requirements that are tied to liability. Here's just 4 examples from our own community. 2 property companies wanted to install AEDs in the over 80 buildings they owned. After reviewing the current law, they decided to install AEDs in just 2 of those 80 buildings. The business tenants could not ensure that the required certified, quote, trained, unquote, personnel would be present during all business hours. 2 hotels had the same issue and did not install AEDs. A yoga studio wanted to install AEDs but could not comply with the training or supervision requirements. And last fall, outdated AED requirements added thousands of dollars of unnecessary expense. We strongly support this bill. SB 658 removes the outdated requirements. It leaves in requirements which protect victim safety and promote public health. It clarifies liability and still requires AED location and use reporting and responsible maintenance.
Thank you very much. All right, very briefly, if you would.
Thank you. I'm Kathleen Weiss. I'm the CEO of the American Red Cross Gold Country region here in Sacramento. 658 seeks to modify statutes such as it is that is in sync with technology updates that AEDs have received in the last 15 years. As Senator Hill said, we've got nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Only 10% of victims who suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital setting survive. Red Cross shares in the goal of wanting to save lives. One of my board members is a resident of a 55 and over senior community in Placer County. His retirement community is not willing to install AEDs and has removed existing ones due to current requirements on the books and the liability issues. Each minute defibrillation is delayed, chances of survival decreases by 10%. Being able to use an AED early on is crucial to preventing brain damage and will greatly increase the victim's odds for survival. In keeping with our mission to help people prevent and prepare for emergencies, the American Red Cross Gold Country region offers AED training. And while the Red Cross encourages training, we understand it's not realistic for everyone. Technological advances have made AEDs user-friendly. AED give clear, audible instructions and will not shock the person unless they are in cardiac arrest. The new generation of AEDs is so simple that nearly anyone can successfully administer them without training or practice. They have built-in computers that monitor the heart rhythm of the cardiac arrest victim.
I could stop you here. We saw an example of it today, so I think we all saw how it works. So if you could just close.
Yep. In closing, I will just say that we strongly support SB 658 and urge you to pass it along.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in support, name, affiliation, and obviously your support for the bill, please.
Madam Chair, members, Matthew Hargis of the California Business Properties Association, strongly in support of the bill.
Thank you, sir.
Vignesh Ganapathy with the Civil Justice Association of California, also strongly in support of the bill.
Thank you.
Amber King with the Association of California Healthcare Districts, in support.
Thank you.
Michael Radigan on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, Santa Clara County, in support.
Thank you.
Fred Notler representing Stanford Healthcare in support.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members, Aaron McGuire on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association in support.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, Keith Dunn on behalf of the California Apartment Association in support.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Chris McKaylee on behalf of the California Ambulance Association in support.
Very good. Thank you.
Jennifer Burr on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, also in support.
Thank you.
Misty Johnson on behalf of Phillips. We're here to answer any technical questions about AEDs. We know the committee doesn't need another demonstration.
Thank you very much.
Margaret Gladstein on behalf of the California Retailers Association in support.
Thank you so much. Any witnesses in opposition? Please come forward. You can come forward, please. If you would just come to the table here. Okay, 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, Senators. My name is Greg Landon. Thank you for hearing this testimony. I'm a retired fire captain and paramedic from the Sacramento area. Retired after 30 years of fire service. I'm president of a company that was founded 25 years ago, which trains individuals across the state in how to save lives with CPR and AEDs. We are a leader in the state AED program implementation, management, tracking, and medical oversight, as we've been doing this since the early days of AEDs in the state of California. Not by research, not by speculation, but by years of AED program oversight, we know for a fact what makes an AED program successful, functional, but those elements which will potentially ensure failure. I oppose SB 658 as currently written. I do want to save lives. We do want, and I want, AEDs out there in our communities, but getting more AEDs in the communities without anyone to use them is not what we're looking for. This bill draws the assumption if more AEDs were to be placed in public access locations across the state, this would equate to more lives saved. Referenced in the analysis of this bill is the 2010 CDC report on public access defibrillation, or PAD programs. In part, it studied the state laws on AED program policies and the extent to which 13 PAD program elements, based on the Heart Association recommendations, were mandated in each state. California was identified as a leader because we had more of those 13 points than most other states. We had more of a successful program. What's being proposed today is we eliminate 4 of those essential elements and go backwards in that status. The article concluded the PAD programs in many other states are at risk of failure because they don't have items such as maintenance, medical oversight, EMS notification, and continuous quality improvement. They weren't required. These are the very same changes to this bill that I do oppose.
Excuse me,
yes,
because you're just about out of time, but I'm very interested in your concerns. Are you aware that this bill, did you look at the other bill that we presented today?
Yes.
That talks about maintenance and so forth. So would you be very specific in your close as to what it is that you think is missing that we should have, if you were going to write the bill, if you will,
yes,
to improve, because the goal is to improve the use of these things and their availability. Yes. What would you do differently than is in the bill?
Number one point, I wouldn't remove the requirement for training. Training is required. American Heart Association states that. This bill was before this committee in the 2009-2010 session, almost identical. Senator Leno made a very wise point at that point in time. He said, American Heart Association, you say that it's not.
So what I want to bring to your attention, and I apologize for interrupting, but it's getting late, is that
certainly,
under the other bill, Senator Hueso's bill, it does require, it ensures that the existing immunities apply only where there is, where existing maintenance, training, and notice requirements are complied with. So this bill would kind of connect, as I understand it, sort of hand in glove with Senator Hueso's measure, so that there would be the requirement of maintenance, training, and notice.
So we're not changing Health and Safety Code Section 1797.196 to remove those elements of a AED program?
So my understanding is that this bill changes what those standards are. Is that
correct?
Okay. And you don't like that?
In order to get the immunities, which all of us want,
right?
They want to try to take key components and gut out the health and safety bill in that one subsection.
So if you were writing this bill, how would you phrase that? Because we don't want to gut the. I don't think anybody wants to reduce the likelihood that these things are going to be used in saving lives. That's what we've been hearing about from everybody.
Training and accountability. If we could get those 2 items back into the bill. And accountability doesn't necessarily have to be from a physician. I understand that. It's difficult.
All right.
Only a handful of agencies will do that.
Thank you.
But as we take training out, people will not respond if they haven't been trained. I've audited a lot of people, a lot of classes, and I say that the AED on the wall in the hallway, would you use it right now at the beginning of class? Not one person except those that have been trained said, yes, I'll go get that. No one says they'll grab those units. More AEDs does not necessarily equate to saving.
Great. Thank you very much. Other witnesses in opposition?
Madam
very
Chair.
briefly.
Madam Chair and members, Savina Tucker with the Consumer Attorneys of California, and we had an opposed unless amended position on this bill because we were concerned about weakening the training, the maintenance requirements. But as amended, we've become neutral, so we thank the committee staff for their work on this, and we thank the author for taking the amendment.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page here with this. Anyone else in opposition? So my understanding is that this bill, with the amendments, will require there be training, maintenance, and accountability. Am I wrong on that?
No, you're not wrong. It's just it's a little different. The training is on an annual basis. There would be a demonstration for someone in the building would know how, where it is, and locate it, and know how it works. So there would be a demonstration of the product itself, and so that they will have the ability to be able to use it. But here again, the training aspect of this bill or of anything today related to the new technology in the AEDs show that the training, if you have someone trained and they're on the 17th floor and the person with the heart attack is on the first floor with the AED, by the time that person gets to that, or they're at lunch or not available, if you have one person in the building, that person will be dead. And if it's especially at the rate of 10%, which I just learned that 10% per minute of survival rate is diminished.
So would you respond to that?
Demonstration annually, as you just saw, that would be considered a demonstration. Would any of you feel as though you're capable of taking that AED off the wall, laying it on the floor, opening it up, bearing a chest, getting the electrodes in the correct spot, making sure it's dry enough that there's not hair, and that you're actually going to push a button if it says push the button to defibrillate a patient without being trained? I don't see the community doing that. Our students in classes don't see themselves doing that.
And
so I
Madam Chair,
think it's a very essential component.
Let him just finish, and then I'll go back to you. Okay, I get the point here. Senator, would you like to respond?
I will respond, yes. First, the comments related to the Red Cross and that their comments about training and that the Red Cross supports the bill, saying currently building owners must meet onerous requirements in order to satisfy liability exemptions. And the Red Cross supports the bill because it streamlines and updates certain requirements governing AED placement. By encouraging the placement of AEDs in buildings, we can save lives. That's the Red Cross comment that are opposed.
Right. But and I don't dismiss that. I appreciate we have someone here who has some of that experience. So what I would,
has a business that.
Well, that is true.
I've been doing this for 30 years.
But no, excuse me, through the chair, it's getting late, so we're going to, okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move the bill as amended to include all the amendments listed on page 13 of the analysis.
Thank you. So all I would ask is, I recognize you may have a business doing this. The concern I think that we all share is we want to make sure that we're giving immunities. We want to make sure that with that will come some sense that people can learn how to use this and use it as needed. That's what we want to do, is save lives. So the amendments have been accepted by the author. I would just simply ask that you, as this goes forward, try to make sure, because the notion that people may not, and I believe that if you don't have confidence in what you're doing, people aren't going to go there, and that defeats the whole purpose of all these AEDs.
I agree, Madam Chair.
So we have a motion, and with that, quick comment by Senator Monning, then a quick close by Senator Hill, and we'll close.
I want to thank the author for bringing this forward and all the inputs of concern. I believe the way we maximize the utility of these is not just training of people in the buildings. In health classes in high schools, we should be training young people in mass so that when they see that machine on a wall and they see somebody on the ground, they have the confidence. And I think, and again, that's beyond the scope of this bill. I'm just trying to, how do we get the maximum public health benefit? We create opportunities for large numbers of the population to become proficient. Schools, military, wherever, everyone should be exposed. I think you have a motion already.
Yes, and Senator Leno had one quick comment, but I think that's an excellent suggestion. I don't know how we incorporate that into the schools, but it's certainly worth an inquiry. Senator Leno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Hill, we did meet. I expressed some of my concerns. You addressed them, specifically the blanket immunity. You've met the committee more than halfway. I think as it now is amended, I'll be pleased to support the bill.
Very good. All right. And with that, I know the senator's asking for an aye vote.
Thank you, Madam.
Very good. Please call the roll to as do pass as amended to the Senate floor. Thank you, Senator, for working with us on the bill.
Very much for.
Jackson.
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Morlock. Morlock, aye. Anderson. Anderson, aye. Hertzberg. Hertzberg, aye. Leno. Leno, aye. Monning. Monning, aye. Wachowski. Wachowski, aye.
Thank you. That bill has 7 votes, and it is out. Thank you.